Morgan City Planning Commission meeting this evening. And we are doing this in two streaming fashions. One is for those of you that have registered into the live Zoom meeting, and we're also streaming this in a non-interactive channel through YouTube Live. A couple of things with respect to just the logistics of a streaming meeting. We'd ask that everybody in the meeting room keep their Zoom on mute during the course of the meeting until and when they are ready to speak during the appropriate times of the meeting. This will just help keep any background noise and echoes and distractions to a minimum. So thank you for that, and thank you for members of the community who have joined and registered. We welcome you as part of this session as well. We will start off. Our agenda is threefold. Before we jump into our agenda, we will just, as a commission, review the minutes from our last meeting, which was August 18th last month. We'll go through that, and then we'll move into our three agenda items as follows. The first agenda item will be related to a rezone request on off the Island Road. This is a public hearing that we'll open up at the appropriate time. And then there's a concept review discussion related to that proposal and application. And then the third agenda item that we'll wrap up with for the evening is a historic design review on Commercial Street. And we'll go into the details of each of these as we progress through the agenda. Before jumping in, I want to open it up for members of the commission to submit any revisions or edits to the minutes from August 18th. Depending on that, I would entertain any motion to move those minutes into the public record and approve them.
Nate, I'd like to point out just a spelling correction.
Okay.
It's on page 2, under item number 1, the very last paragraph. The fifth word in should be binding. Okay, I got a thumbs up from Teresa, so we're good.
We're good. I was just following along. I've got 4 monitors up and I found it.
All right.
Thank you for pointing that out. Any other revisions or edits to the minutes from our last month's meeting? Seeing no comments on further revisions, I would call for a motion to approve the minutes into the record.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to accept these minutes into record.
Thank you, Mr. Woods. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you. All in favor? Let's do a visible hand up so we can see in the Zoom. So I think I see everybody. It looked, I didn't have a video for everybody. Maybe we'll just do a roll call through. David. Thank you. Jim, I saw your hand. My hand was affirmative. We have Mr. Woods and Jay Hackett as well, I see. So Wes, I didn't see your hand. Just want to confirm one more time. All right. That is unanimous. We'll now move into the formal part of our meeting for this evening. This is a public hearing to rezone, or an application was submitted to rezone a portion of property, 12-acre or 11.25 acre parcel at approximately 550 north, 400 west. Again, just off the Island Road, from an agricultural zone currently to a single family designation. The application is asking for an R110 rezone request. Any type of rezone requires a public hearing. We will move into our public hearing to hear from citizens of Morgan City regarding this particular application. Before we do that, I want to outline just a couple of housekeeping items that I think will help make this a little more smooth, given that this will be our first public hearing that we've entertained remotely. One of the things, again, that I would request is everybody keeps their line on mute. If you would like to participate and share your comments with respect to this particular rezone application, then please, on the Zoom meeting controls, there's a button where you can click raise hand. When you raise your hand, I will acknowledge that, give you the floor, and you'll have an opportunity to share your thoughts. When you do share your thoughts, a couple of things that will help. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes or less to enable time for everybody to share their thoughts as well. And focus on the application that is at hand here, which is the rezone from agricultural to residential. One of the things that I would ask for members of the commission, we'll have an opportunity to weigh in on all of the thoughts members of the public share. And we will, I'm asking that we hold those comments until the end and let members of the public share all of their thoughts, and we will go to that point. That being said, we'll give this a go, and hopefully the technology cooperates and everything works so that we can get everybody's perspective regarding this particular application. I will, at this time, declare the public session open and entertain anyone who would like to provide their perspective or insight with respect to this property on 550 North, 400 West.
This is Daryl Rupp. I'm just wondering, as the applicant, are we supposed to go first in terms of making some kind of an oral presentation, or do we just leave it open for whomever?
Daryl, that's a great question. I think it would be helpful just for you to provide an overview of the proposed project and what you're looking to do. And then let's have the comments come in from those in the community. And we'll try to limit the dialogue back and forth as we go through this, just so that everybody has a chance to speak. But I think it'd be very helpful for you to set some context for the project.
Okay, thank you. We have an advisor. His name is Norman Daly. And so what we will do is just turn the time over to him to make that presentation.
Hang on. He's
Okay,
on the
so
phone with us.
In the top
He
right-hand
got
corner
clicked out.
of your video screen, you see.
Okay, let's do.
Sorry, as you might have expected, we're running into a little bit of a technical difficulty. I'm going to have Norm speak, and you, Mr. Chair, raise your hand if you can hear him. It doesn't seem to be engaging his microphone from where he is. Go ahead, Norm. I'm with him on the phone.
Okay, let's try that.
I can't hear you on the computer. I can only hear you on
You
the
have to
phone.
hold your phone up to the computer.
Oh. Let me see, hang on, let's see if we can do it that way. Okay, we're gonna try and run him through our audio. Go ahead, Norm.
Mr. Chairman, can you hear me?
I sure can.
Okay. As Daryl's indicated, my name is Norm Daly. I live down in Salt Lake City, Utah. I'm working with the Rupps and their presentation of their application with respect to the rezone of their property. Based on a review of the general plan, we anticipated that low density would be the best use for the property. In order to understand what the city was looking for, we scheduled a meeting with the Morgan City staff and presented at that time three options for a subdivision layout. After that meeting, we submitted a plan to them, to the staff. There were some additional comments, and then we revised that plan, which is representative of the plan which was submitted as a concept. As is understood, the Rupps fully intended on developing this property, especially in light of working with the residents along 400 West. They participated with them, provided land, and were instrumental in allowing that subdivision to proceed. The concept is given just simply to indicate that the subdivision plan is a viable option. It is understood that as we work through the preliminary and final approval process, that there will be changes may be required. And we fully anticipate that through that process, we'll adapt and make those changes as are required. The development is consistent with the city's master or general plan, and also it reflects the city's ordinances and statutes, which were adopted, which I'm assuming are adopted to secure the life and safety of all its citizens. And we believe that what is presented is consistent not only with the general plan, but also with the utilization of the property. As we reviewed the layout, we anticipated there may be some concerns about lot size. And so most of the lots along the contiguous property are larger lots, understanding that there may be some concern regarding the size. We understand that the neighbors have concerns and questions, but I think today's request is simply for the rezone from agricultural to a low density residential. So, not wanting to belabor anything, I would request that the Planning Commission move forward with approval of the Rupp property as recommended by staff and send this to the Planning Commission with its recommendation for approval. Thank you.
And thank you, Mr. Dahl. Hopefully I pronounced your name properly. I appreciate those comments. Just to clarify the action from the end of that, the Planning Commission does not make the approval one way or another. What we'll do is provide a recommendation to the City Council one way or another, depending on how the body votes throughout this meeting tonight. We'd like to emphasize one of the points that you did make, which is that the application on before us tonight and what this public hearing is about is the rezone. There are a lot of questions, and I anticipate public input regarding the nature of the project, and you've outlined a little bit of what that is intended to be. The question on the table tonight and what will be referred on, depending how the course of the evening goes, to the city council, is simply a recommendation regarding the rezone request from agricultural to a residential use, and as asked for in the application, is an R110 zone. Thank you for those comments. Let me just scan the participant list for any raised hands to also weigh in and share thoughts, concerns regarding this proposed project. Looks like we have Steve Wynn, who has raised his hand. I saw Steve first. We'll go with you. And then Steve, when you finish your piece, Andrew, I'm not sure your last name, Nyokio, if you will weigh in as well. And it would be helpful, just as a matter of recording. This is a recorded session, and everything becomes part of the public record. If when you start speaking, you would just outline your name for the record as well, that would be helpful. Steve, go ahead.
Thank you. I've had a hard time getting some audio here, so I hope that some of the things that I bring up are new or relevant to the conversation here. But again, my name is Steve Wynn. I live on 400 West. I live across the street from the Rupp development here. And I guess my input as a homeowner down that road is a few concerns with the entrance and the exits of it, and then also the zoning and the look and the feel that it would bring to our community. I know from previous experience with the Planning Commission, the city seems to want to have a rural type of a feel in the city, and having transition points within that rural feel. 400 West is currently an R20. This development's looking at an R10, and after our street, there's not any other developments. Well, you can't say that, but it doesn't seem like there's going to be very, very many developments in the near future until you hit the county line. And so I guess my input to you is I would be okay with an R20 transition, keeping the Rupps at an R20, having the R10 over at Carl Harding's and back to Wasatch Shadows, and allowing us to have a little bit more of a transition within the city out to the county. The other concern that I have is the frontage that is required in development. And I don't know if this has changed yet or not, but I know it's been talked about. But one of the things that I don't like to see in a rural community is shoulder to shoulder to shoulder houses. And I believe right now in R10, and it may be in R20 as well, that the minimum frontage is 80 feet, where all of ours on 400 West are at least 100 feet, right? Giving a little bit more of an open feel than a shoulder to shoulder to shoulder house complex. So I don't know if that's something that would be relevant for this conversation or not, but that would be something that I would be a proponent with. The other thing that I'd like to bring up is the exits and the entrances. They all dump off onto 400 West with one outlet into Island Road. Most of those developments along that area have been planned with a future entrance or exit on the backside of those. And I would think that would be something that would be necessary here. And I know that the only thing in this meeting is the zoning change. But if we give the okay with the proposed concept, it makes it much more difficult down the road for somebody to come in and say, hey, I don't think it should be this way because you guys approved this on this concept plan that I've given you. So anyway, that's my input is I want the development. I want the growth. I would support an R20 change. If there's a way to put in a 100-foot frontage stipulation into there, and then just the exit and the entrance, having some future development to go out the back there, so that not everything is dumped onto Island Road there from 400 West.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Nguyen. Let's move to Andrew G. For your comments. Cody Howe, you're on deck.
All right. Good evening, everyone. I hope you can hear me. I'm pretty much of the same opinion.
Andrew, just to jump in real quick, if you wouldn't mind pronouncing your full name for us.
You bet. My full name's Andrew Ginocchio. I'm a resident over on Larkspur Lane, just off Island Road.
Thank you.
My concerns with the development as it currently stands now is the only entrance and exit would be off of Island Road. And based on the map that was provided, we're looking at roughly 30 houses in there. If there were 2 working adults in the home, we're adding about another 120 entrances and exits a day off 300 West, which is already kind of narrow, very busy. My kids ride a bike to school and back, so I'm a little bit worried. I would get behind the development. I think we could approve it if we made it contingent maybe upon finishing that 400 West, so they did have an entrance and exit out of the back. I think that would be kind of a reasonable compromise, but that's my input. Other than that, I fully support making it into a residential neighborhood. I think it's great. Thank you.
Andrew, thank you for your comments. Cody, let's hear from you.
Okay, hi, I'm Cody Howe. I'm a resident on 400 West there, and you know, the things that I'm primarily concerned with have already been talked about, but I'll just kind of reemphasize, you know, the fact that I would be more on board with an R20 versus an R10, just to give us those bigger lots and maybe, you know, just maybe a fewer less homes. The biggest reason that I say that is with the one exit in and out and no sidewalks down 300 West, it's a safety concern for not only my kids but all the other kids in the neighborhood, because we currently aren't within the radius of being bused to school, so those kids have to get to school somehow. They either have to be driven or they have to walk or ride their bicycles, and there's currently not a real safe way to do that. And so I think if we can limit the size of the lots and reduce the number of homes a little bit, that helps a little bit with the safety concern there. And then the other thing is, again, the other possible entrance or exit out, rather than dumping all of that traffic out onto 400 West and then onto Island Road, because it's fairly close to that bend on where 300 West transitions into Island Road, and it's pretty narrow, and I think just adding that many more cars will be problematic. But as long as, you know, I'm all for development, all for bringing in more families and making our community better. I just think that if we do it, we want to make sure we do it correctly and think about some of these things that have been discussed. That's all for me.
Thank you, Mr. Howe. Appreciate that. Tim Witt also has his hand raised, and Tim, before taking the floor, you had submitted a letter on behalf of the concerned neighbors for the 400 West development. And as part of your comments, if you're so inclined, I would invite you to read that letter into the record as well. And the time is yours.
Thanks, guys. Can you everybody hear me?
We can hear you.
Excellent. All right, going through, I need to pull up the letter here. I don't actually have it in hand. Let me grab it real quick. But yeah, we met as a neighborhood, basically, and just to go over everything real quick. if I can find that. Sorry about that.
You're just fine. I have a copy of it if you can't pull it up as well.
I've got it right here. Okay, perfect. Yeah, so we did submit a letter with about 10 items that we wanted to address. A lot of those items have already been discussed. Again, as a neighborhood, I think the general consensus is we do not have an issue with that land being developed. The number one concern was the traffic. The additional traffic that's going to add. Just on 400 West, that would add about a 400% increase to traffic. With that surge in traffic, we would definitely want to or have requested another way in and out of 400 West and or Island Road, right? Just to allow us to be able to not be so congested with traffic in this area. The second concern there on that letter that we sent in was traffic all the way down to 200 West or 200 North, excuse me. I don't know if you've ever tried to turn left on 200 North during peak hours before or after school or at rush hour, but it's kind of cumbersome as it is right now. It takes a little bit of time. Adding that additional traffic would just compound that issue. And so we wanted to bring that up and just bring that to everybody's attention and try and prove or to try to help the point that we need additional ways in and out of the 400 West. The third thing on there, again, is talking about how it's imperative to have another way in and out. The fourth thing on there was lot size. I know we're not talking about that tonight. We're just talking about the rezoning tonight. But a lot of the neighbors, we felt that those lot sizes didn't fit necessarily the area. The area generally has lot sizes a half acre to an acre plus, and we'd like to see that be consistent. We talked about, Steve Wynn already talked about the frontage being changed from 80 to 100 feet to kind of be consistent with what we're already seeing on 400 West. Another item on there was the zoning. Currently 400 West is zoned at R120. We'd like to see that be consistent. There's certain benefits that come with our R120 zoning, specifically with animals. We'd like to make sure that we secure that into the future and that one side of the street isn't different from the other side of the street and leading to that possibly changing the other side of the street at a future time, if that makes any sense. And then we talked about possible home sizes, minimum home sizes, which I know isn't relevant here tonight. So we'll skip over that and say that for a later meeting. And then also the exterior, what the homes would look like. One thing we did want to bring up again is the sidewalks. Mr. Genoki already brought up the sidewalks, but we would love to see a sidewalk on the east side of 400 West, all the way down to 300 West to provide a place. Even, just right now, we would love to see that, just to have an area where kids can walk safely out of the road. If you drive down the Island Road, 300 West there, the kids are in the road because there's no sidewalk there. So we'd love to see a sidewalk there. And then we just wanted to ensure the infrastructure can support that additional that many additional people, not just the water, secondary water, electrical, but the school system. That's going to bring some kids into the school system. How are we gonna accommodate that many more kids? Is that going to require more classrooms and that kind of thing? Would that be something the developer would have to donate some money toward that or something like that? And those were the main items that we wanted to talk about. And so I just wanted to bring those up. And then the neighbor actually contacted me, Ron Weilert, who also lives on 400 West, and he's unable to make it to the meeting tonight, but he wanted to make sure that I mentioned that he feels the exact same way as the other concerns that have been brought up as well. So that's all I have.
Mr. Witt, thank you for sharing all of those thoughts on behalf of the concerned neighbors for the 400 West development. I don't see any other hands raised, so if you are waiting to join the conversation, now's a good time. Who else would like to participate? Press the raise hand button in your Zoom controls, and I will give you time.
Commissioner,
Yes,
Dan Dixon's hand is raised if you didn't see that one.
I did not see that one. Mr. Dixon, let's go with you. And I see Mr. Jeffrey Hogan will be on deck.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you.
Wonderful. My wife and I are here, and we're happy to comment on this. We're neighbors across the street from the proposed Rupp subdivision. And I think that as I hear the issues, I'd like to add my voice to a couple of those. One being the safety concerns that we have leading to this subdivision. As has been pointed out, we have one way in and out, and we have approximately 200 young children and youth that could potentially go up and down this street. It's a problem. We don't have sidewalks on the side. The streets are narrow. Sometimes the lighting is a little dark. I am very concerned with accidents and with these young children. And so I think that's one of my main concerns is adding to the traffic situation. I think that might just result in a future accident, and I'd like to see us avoid that if we could prior to giving approval. As had been mentioned, the R120, I agree with that. I'd like to see the land and the homes have a similar lot size to those that are in the adjacent area across the street. The Rupps, you guys are awesome. We love you, and we would welcome you to have a nice R120 lot right across the street from us so we could be neighbors. I think those are the main points that I wanted to emphasize.
Thank you, Mr. Dixon. Mr. Hogan, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd just like to, as a concerned citizen, just express my voice to what's been said tonight. My biggest concern is the safety, especially leaving from Golden West down to 400 West. Island Road and 300 West, the infrastructure is deficient at best at that point. As it's been said numerous times, the vehicular traffic that's going to increase will be substantial from these homes, whether it's even an R10 or even an R20. I believe the thing that I would like to see is that it would be, I'm not against the subdivision or the development thereof. I'm in support of that. But I'd like to see that it's done correctly. What we're doing now would set precedents for the future, for future subdivisions that come in following, whether if we call this, if you will, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. So if the infrastructure is not in place prior to allowing phase 1 to be developed, I think you'll set the precedents for phase 2 and the developers there. And then what we have is a compounding issue of safety, especially for traffic coming around Island Road. So as I would propose or recommend on my end is, let's do it right. Let's fix Island Road and 300 West prior to allowing that so that the safety concerns are alleviated. As Cody Howe mentioned, the line of sight around the bend right there is terrible. You come in there and you have vehicles going both ways. There's no place for individuals that, whether it be pedestrians or bicyclists, to ride or move, and they get pushed out. With the guardrail being on the north side there, there's not a lot of room. So once again, it's my time. I just like to say, that is one of my main concerns, especially also if we have a disaster, the emergency exits. You look at the one exit out Island Road, and you start including more and more traffic if we do have a disaster. Actually grew up in the state of Oregon. If everybody's familiar with that right now, it's on fire. But we just want to be prepared for that in case of an emergency does it happen, that we'll be able to funnel all those people out and get them to safety. So I'd like that the Planning and Zoning Commission at least take a look at that, hear our words, and realize the safety and importance of it to the community on developing and doing it the right way. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any other hands raised, so if you have a thought, feel free to raise your hand through your Zoom meeting controls. while you're thinking or waiting to participate, I just want to acknowledge Andrew made one more comment in the chat within Zoom that he's concerned that the construction traffic alone would be worrisome, separate and apart from the planned residents. So I wanted to read that chat into the record as well. Thank you, Andrew.
Hang on, there you go.
This is Daryl. We're going to put Norm Daly on again for a final comment.
All right, thank you.
Go ahead, Norm.
Obviously, whenever a development is proposed in an area that is rural, as has been mentioned, there's always concern that the improvements and what's planned will have a major impact in the neighborhood. When you look at the total impact on a traffic pattern or a traffic impact, 30 homes will definitely have an impact to put more traffic on 400 West. But when you look at that over a day or a week, the total number really is marginal. Now, granted, people live there, they see it differently, and I understand that. But as I look at this from a macro perspective and having developed similar properties throughout the West, the total traffic impact is negligible. Now, I think as was discussed, we are looking at concept approval for an R110 zone. Right now, 20% of the lots are a half acre or close to a half acre. The 100-foot frontage along Northwest, most of the lots proposed there have the 100-foot frontage. I think the two on the cul-de-sac are a little less than that. And I would also expect that when we talk about transition, and please forgive me if I'm wrong on my directions, but when I look at the zoning right now from the exhibit, the zoning map application exhibit, it shows that the lots on 400 South or R120 and all of the land, I'm going to say north of that, is all considered for R120. The transition, again, is a matter of perspective, and I believe with the combination of lot sizes in the rough proposal, that provides a transition. Now, granted, it may not be what the residents like, but the transition is there, and as costs increase for development and improvement costs, and as people have family that want to move into an area, there hopefully is an alternative for these individuals to find something more within a price range that they can afford. I would also anticipate when you look at the lots that back up onto the property that there will be those that attempt to subdivide those into a deep lot or a flag lot, which will also add, further more homes into the area. So I think just drawing our attention back to the fact that we're requesting the zoning and appreciate the Planning Commission's input. And if you have any questions, either I or Daryl or Cheryl would be willing to respond to that. Thank you.
Thank you for that.
I'm sorry about the feedback.
I think we got the gist of it. Cheryl or Daryl, do you have anything to add to that?
I just wanted to say no one would be more interested in hang on one second, no one would be more interested in improving the safety on Island Road than we.
Yeah.
We fully recognize that there are some hazards without the sidewalk. We also fully anticipate that the side of the street of 400 West that does not currently have a sidewalk would have a sidewalk as part of the development, giving both the children in the new development as well as those currently on 400 West a safer way at least to make it to the Island Road. But we certainly would have no objection to the city taking advantage of land they already own on the Island Road and widening it and putting sidewalks in. So we concur completely with everyone on that issue. Anything, Cheryl?
Just in 2004, we gave the city a right of easement to create 400 West so that those homes could even be built. And in anticipation that one day we would be able to develop our own property. So 400 West exists because we were good neighbors.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just as a reminder, the public hearing remains open. If there is anyone else participating that would like to make comment in this public session, please raise your hand by clicking the raise hand control in the Zoom controls.
Chairman, we have another housekeeping item, if you don't mind.
Sure. And then
We
got
had
one
somebody.
hand. We'll come back with the hand.
So we had somebody join just with a phone number in the registration. You're supposed to register so you could enter your name. So if they could identify themselves, we could put the name on there for the record, just for the attendance.
Thank you. So that's the participant. That's 801-891-6424. If you could please identify yourself. And if you can't identify yourself verbally due to your microphone, because it looks like you don't have a microphone connected, if you can through the chat in the Zoom controls, that would be helpful.
And it might be a participant that's using their audio from their phone, even though their video is on their computer. So if anybody knows whose phone number that is, they could just let us know.
Okay. Thank you for bringing that up, Ty. I did see a hand from, let's see, the hand went back. Oh, there we go. Mr. Jeffrey Hogan, one more time. The floor is yours. If you're speaking, we can't hear you. You might still be on mute, Mr. Hogan.
Sorry about that. Sorry, Mr. Chair. Quick question, just directed towards the Planning and Zoning Commission. Has the City of Morgan, have they performed a traffic study on, existing conditions and projected volumes for the development in this area or anything like that to see what we're anticipating in the future build out?
That's a great question. I'm going to have that be fielded by a member of Morgan staff. I don't know, Steve, if you can address that particular question. This is Steve Garside, if you're on, if you'd be able to address that.
Yeah, traffic studies are usually done only if there's going to be a significant and a large impact, and this type would not. I mean, we could look back historically to see when the last ones were done, but usually traffic studies aren't, like you say, aren't development driven unless it is a significantly large development, and this would not meet that criteria.
There have been traffic studies that are contingent in other parts of the city with different projects over time, some that are done by the city, some that are done by UDOT, depending on the proposed development. So it's not something that is ignored or hasn't been considered, but as part of the regular development process, depending on the size and nature of the development. Thank you for the question. We have in the chat just a comment by Mr. Blaine Freestone that I'll read. He says, "We don't have a problem with the development. We have a problem with the rezoning. Why are we trying to go to 110 instead of 120? Thank you for the question, Blaine. And then there's a comment that says the anonymous number, it belongs to the Dahls, Seth or Norm Dahl. So if that's the case, Cheryl and Daryl, if you can confirm that that's the number that you have connected on your phone line, that'd be great.
On the caller, I apologize.
Yes, the number for the phone you've been holding up to the microphone.
Oh, no, that's,
It's not that phone. The telephone number is of my son-in-law, Seth Daly.
Okay. Okay. So Ty, Teresa, that number belongs to Seth Daly. Thank you.
can we respond to the Mr. Freestone's question about why are we trying to rezone to R110?
Yes, the answer is yes. Before you jump in, let me again reiterate the consideration before the Planning and Zoning Commission this evening, which is exactly what you're talking about, the rezone from an agricultural use today to a residential use with on your application is requesting R110. There are other low density residential designations that we've heard come up tonight. One is an R112, as well as what we've been hearing across the street on 400 West, which is R120. And I want to make sure that we keep the comments focused on addressing the question before the commission tonight, and this is in line with that. So please jump in with your comments. The floor. Yes, the floor is yours. Yes.
Thank you. The reason that we have requested rezone for R110 is because we based everything off of the city's master plan, which we were given when we purchased the property. And so the rezone is based off Morgan City's master plan that we were given when we purchased the property.
Given that, and the fact that it is consistent with the city's master plan, in the letter that we received by the city, the recommendation is that it does go to that they should recommend approval of the zoning change based on the fact that it is consistent with everything that the city has anticipated in its master plan and ordinances and zoning.
And our concept of the subdivision is just that. It's a concept. We were asked to come up with an idea, a plan, a concept for a subdivision, and we spent money to do so. It's not concrete, but we want to be able to make it feasible based on the zoning.
Thank you. Again, as a reminder, the public hearing remains open. If you would like to participate, please do so by raising your hand, and you'll be called upon to share your comments. while there's a moment, let me just share a couple of thoughts with respect to what I've been hearing. First of all, I really do appreciate the comments that have been shared. And in particular, just to hear the engagement from concerned folks that live in this beautiful city and want to have influence over the future of what the city looks like. And I value that, and thank you for your willingness to be part of the process. Especially grateful for the time participating in this meeting, but also the preparation ahead of time to think through some of the planning issues that are important to you. They are duly noted. I want to recap a few of these just to kind of outline some of the concerns that I've heard as the chairperson of the Planning Commission. And these, of course, throughout the development process will receive due consideration as well. But let me just outline a few of these while the floor is still open and others are considering weighing in before we close the public hearing. One of the concerns that I heard is very closely tied to the entrance and exits to access the proposed development, particularly with the single access point from 300 West and some of the safety concerns with that. Based on the size of the proposed rezone, trying to get a sense for the look and feel of how that might impact the community, particularly with this rural look and feel concept in the surrounding contiguous properties. Related to that, transitioning from city to county areas and what those transitions should look like, how those are buffered. Frontage concerns with the size of frontage to the street and what that means as far as potential development that in homes and how that would look in the neighborhoods going in. Again, related to safety, were sidewalks, both along 400 West and within the subdivision, and then of course the 300 West sidewalk or lack thereof. Concerns about the extra traffic, and in particular, not just residential traffic, but during the construction process, construction traffic. There were comments made about the proposed concept as submitted is outlining 30 lots and whether or not that's consistent with the density of what's in place in the surrounding properties. Particularly there's a comment made about the zoning with the R120 allows for certain animal uses and being able to preserve that. There were concerns about schools and the additional pressure that the influx of residential or residents would create on the school system. Again, related to safety is beyond the one way in and out is the pattern where children play today and in the lack of line of sight to be able to see, particularly where there's, again, no sidewalk. And then there's the question of related to all of this and the influx of traffic if a study is warranted. Those were the primary themes. We have all of this recorded that we can go through and address. Those are the ones that I was jotting down as we were going through this. And I want to make sure that it's that we do have an opportunity to hear any other concerns that members of the community and those that have taken time to be part of this public hearing tonight can have your voice heard. Is there anyone else that would like to add to the conversation? Please do so by pressing the raise hand button in the Zoom control. All right, I have two hands up. We'll start with Tim Witt, and then Dan, if you'll follow Tim. Tim, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just thought of one more thing. My sweet wife reminded me of it. We don't see a lot of this in Morgan, but more homes means more people. More people means maybe hopefully no more additional crime, but could lead to additional crime rates. What kind of impact is that going to have on our police force or the safety of our neighborhoods as well? So did want to mention that as well. The more dense a population is, the more crime tends to occur.
Thank you. And Mr. Dixon.
This is his wife, Diane. I've lived in Morgan all my life, and I have never seen a master plan for this city. I'm very concerned for that. I wish I could have access to the master plan. I hate to see this go to an R10. I think it needs to stay to an R20. We have a lot of development going, but if you look at, I wish we could see and have the community vote on this master plan. This is our town, this is our city, and we welcome people, but to this magnitude of 30 people, 30 new homes on this limited spot, it's too small. And I would like to see the master plan and let the community have a vote on what we do with some of this development.
Thank you. I forgot your first name, Mrs. Dixon.
That's perfect.
Thank you. Anyone else want to add to the conversation?
Mr. Chair, looks like there's some additional chat comments.
All right, and part of what I'm trying to do is, I may have set a bad precedent by reading the first one in. I'd like to keep these coming through the audio so that everybody can hear it and it's part of the recording. But let's look at what we have here, and then just moving forward, if we can keep the dialogue in the verbal channels, that would be helpful. But let me read this. Looks like Mr. Freestone was following up on his earlier question about a traffic study and wants to know what's considered a significant change. There are approximately 100 homes on Island Road, so 30 new homes is a significant increase. Mr. Cody Payne is saying, and I apologize, doesn't the city master plan show an additional entry exit through Wasatch Shadows area? This is Mr. Freestone again. We also need to consider all of the traffic from the horse barn, Graceland. It's not just residents on this road. On certain nights, the traffic doubles. Mr. Clint Haywood, we also agree with our neighbors about the traffic and sidewalk concerns. We would also prefer an R120 zoning as well for this development. And Andrew Ginocchio, correct, the traffic is mixed residential vehicles and commercial farm equipment. I believe those were all the comments that catch us up from the chat. Thank you, Mr. Brown, for pointing that out. And any that we missed that anyone else has noticed? And again, many of these points that are being brought up, I want to acknowledge the validity of the questions and concerns, and throughout the development process, they're addressed in different ways and in phases. For purposes of tonight, we may not be addressing each of these points individually, but they will be considered throughout the development process. For purposes of the application and the public hearing that's before us this evening, we're looking at the zoning change request from agricultural to a low density residential. The applicant's requesting R110. And as many people have pointed out, there are 3 zones within the low density classification, which is also R112 and R120. We've spent a fair amount of time going through many of these concerns we've heard from many of you. I want to make sure that we don't prematurely close the public hearing, and everybody who wants to has had an opportunity to share. So it's hard to gauge that virtually. We're doing the best we can, but if you would like to share and you have not yet had an opportunity, if you would please take that opportunity now by raising your hand through the Zoom meeting control. And it looks like we're seeing the public comments taper just a bit. Feel free to jump in the next moment or two. Otherwise, I will entertain a motion from a member of the commission to close the public hearing. We do have one hand. Pamela Hureta, the floor is yours. And if you're speaking, you're still on mute. We still can't hear you. Well, I see that you took yourself off mute, but I'm not hearing you. In your case, given that we are struggling with the audio, I would accept a chat comment to express the thoughts that you wanted to share. Hopefully Pamela Hureta can connect either with audio or through chat to share what she wanted to share. While we're waiting on that, any other input from members of the community who have taken the time to be part of this meeting tonight? I don't see any other hands raised.
I move to close the public hearing.
Let's see, is that Pamela? Are you able to share your thought yet? Well, it's one of the challenges of meeting virtually, trying to get all the technology to connect. It feels like, for whatever reason, we're not able to hear you, Pamela. If you're able to type into the chat pane, then we can still get your input. Otherwise, I'm not sure how to have you participate with your thoughts tonight, unless somebody else has an idea they want to share. There's one recommendation, Pamela, to call in by phone. Oh, here we go. Thank you. I see your chat now. It is my understanding that there's this is Pamela Hureta's chat comment. It is my understanding that there's a property just south of the Rupp property that has been told they must sell larger lots. Why is this the case for him and not this property? That is a conundrum if that's in fact the case. And I have not been made aware of a situation like that. It's something that typically any developer is able to submit an application for any legal use that they want with the property. In this case, petitioning for a zoning change. Other developers, based on what the zones are, and any changes that they're recommending, make their own applications and do what they can within the ordinances. But as far as specific cases, I don't have any background that I can share with respect to that from a planning commission standpoint, and don't know if this is something that be fall into the either the misinformation category, or if there's something behind this. But I don't know enough about all those conversations. And I don't know if anyone from the city staff, Weston, if you want to comment on this particular. This particular question, and Mr. Ackett is just outlining that the zoning is different to the south, and just to outline a little bit of what this is. The 11 1/4 acres, just by way of review, the properties to the north and the east are zoned R18, even though their use is more like a ½ acre use. The properties to the north and west are zoned R120, which is a single family 20,000 square foot lots like those on the opposite side of 400 West. And the adjacent property to the south is zoned agricultural. And so based, like I was saying earlier, based on the zone, that there is a density requirement. In an agricultural zone, you can't just put in as many homes as you want. It's based on, I have to pull it up. I can't remember if it's 1 home per 5 acres or, or 20 acres, something like that. So that could be part of what you're hearing, Pamela, just based on the zone that happens to be immediately adjacent to the south. And I know it's difficult with going through chat for you to clarify or anything with the question, but hopefully that helps.
Mr. Chair,
yes.
just for clarification, you stated that the property to the east was R18, it's R110.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. Appreciate that. We also have another hand raised. Mr. Cody Howe, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. It's really just kind of a clarification or a question for me. I remember Mr. Is it Dahl was when he was speaking, saying, it was kind of a need for additional, housing that's more affordable. The reason being they're looking at R110 is from what I've seen recently, a number of the developments are zoned smaller lots. Therefore, I think there's definitely a number of options available to people looking for that. Whereas, I have talked to a number of people that are looking for something, not really huge, but something in the ½ to 1 acre to a little over an acre size lot to build on, and they're having a hard time finding those types of properties in especially Morgan City. And so, maybe I'm mistaken, but are there other developments that offer that type of a building lot to people looking to build in Morgan City?
And just to clarify, when you're asking what type of building lot, which size are you referring to?
Something in the ½ to 1 acre to right in that range, because like I said, there seems to be a lot of the newer developments that have gone in are offering 1/4 acre or some of these smaller lot sizes, but there isn't a lot of options for that ½ acre to 1 acre or even a little over 1 acre currently in the city.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for the question. And again, the question is geared a little bit more towards the inventory of properties that are available which is a consideration, I suppose, from a marketing perspective of the proposed development. It doesn't necessarily have a bearing on the developer's legal right to to develop the property within the parameters of the zone. So in this case, even if we did have a shortage of larger property sizes within the valley, or within the city limits, I should say, as long as it's zoned appropriately, the developer can maximize that density. And so that does beg the question, and what's before us tonight is the R110 versus these other low density options that are part of a low density classification. Is that more consistent with the general plan? And the general plan's been referenced a couple of times tonight. The general plan does call for low density residential in this area, and that's a plan that's been in place for the past 2 decades, and something that will continue to be revisited. I think it was Mrs. Dixon that was curious about seeing I can't remember if she was referencing the general plan, but seeing this and being part of that process. That is a very public process that can and will be happening to refresh the general plan for the next 20 years. But the general plan that's in place today has been in place for some time. And the proposed application to rezone from agricultural to a low density residential classification is consistent with that plan. And part of the question, the applicant's asking for R110, and there are 2 other classifications within low density that would potentially meet the stipulations of what the general plan calls for that particular property. I know that doesn't speak to your question, Cody, with respect to larger developments. Those are more limited. I personally have not seen any come before the body with larger lots, lot sizes, to the ½ acre or 1 acre, in any recent development or agenda. We've had developments come in adjacent to Wasatch Shadows with the Pheasant Run subdivision that's been approved, and that was that not the large lot sizes that you're referring to. There's been some off 700 East by the North Morgan Cemetery that again don't fall into that large classification. There's been smaller subdivisions that aren't 20, 30, 40 homes, but just a couple of homes here and there, and again those don't typically have those sizes either. So the inventory skews towards the smaller the smaller developments, the higher density. Looks like we've got a couple of other hands up. Steve Wynn, let's go to you.
Mr. Chairman, maybe you can answer this for me, but I believe I've read in a fairly recent minutes notes from Planning Commission meeting, but you guys are planning on, like you said, revamping and refreshing the general plan. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so I would just like to just say that as you guys are thinking through this tonight, while I believe that this area of our valley will always be rural residential, just keep into consideration the different zonings within that, and if that would, where this would fall in consideration with the revamping of a general master plan.
It's a good consideration, and that general plan revamp is a joint effort. It's in conjunction with the city and county, and it's a public process. It's just in the kickoff stages, so nothing has happened yet. And Ty could share more information about that, but that's a topic for another day. But your point is taken that should be considered. Tim, you have a question as well. Your hand is raised.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. I sure appreciate it. Just out of curiosity, we keep talking low density, low density. What does the city consider, what lot size does the city consider high density?
Let me pull up, I don't know, Steve or Weston, if you have that right offhand while I'm trying to pull this up.
I can pull up the high density in a second, but as far as low density is concerned, the general plan calls out this area to have 0 to 5 units per acre. The proposed development, it's about 2.5 units per acre.
Gotcha. So low density is considered as small as 0.2 acres?
Yeah, again, it's 0 to 5 units per acre. So you potentially could have that small of a lot, but it is going to take a holistic view of the whole subdivision.
So anything less than 0.2 acres is kind of considered high density. Is that accurate?
No, there's also moderate density. I'm just referencing what low density is.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and just in our city code, the zones, and these range from being lowest density to highest density, is the agricultural zone, then rural residential, and then these three that we've been talking about tonight: the R120, the R112, the R110. So those are those low densities, and then you start to get into the medium density, which would be things where you have multi-family residence, apartments, townhomes, mobile home parks. So there's those zones that are more that higher density, and then you start to get into other zones like commercial zones and industrial zones. But those are the designations that we have today in our code.
Gotcha. Appreciate the clarification.
Mr. Haywood, your hand is up as well. The floor is yours. Your hand is now down. Maybe if you've withdrawn your comment, that's fine.
Oh, am I there?
There you are. All right.
My problem, also, computer lingities. Anyway, so so my question is, as I'm looking at this concept map, and I realized, something Cheryl said earlier, that's not set in stone. It's the granite or cement or what she said, but also something you said earlier, just as I put those two together, and you said the developer works within the boundaries of the zone, correct? So he can do whatever. And if this concept is not set in stone, which some of the lots are larger lots, a lot of the ones in the front aren't, and a lot of the ones in that little, what I would call the horseshoe, are very, very small. But then once he has a 110 zone, what would stop him from turning that 30 home development into a 40 home development or into a 35 home development? And I really agree with something that Blaine Freestone said on his chat earlier. Our Island Road as it is, not quite a third, but the houses, it would be raising the number of homes by almost a third. And that is significant, regardless of what Mr. Dahl from Salt Lake thinks. That is significant in our town. That is significant in our street, especially with no exit other than right by my house. I was yelling at four-wheelers just today, screaming down the street. There is, and again, there's no sidewalks. My grandkids are out in the driveway tonight, and many times, and I have issues sometimes with the ropers going up and down to Graceland. I understand there's not much to do about that, but I would love a sidewalk along here. I would love another access point leaving the Island Road. And if those two things were there, I would have no problem. But I also think that, and I realize it's not high density, but a subdivision with homes that are kind of on top of each other does not fit how the Island Road is now, how Fourth West is now, how Webster Lane is now, or anywhere else. A lot, starting from Third South all the way down to the end of the Island Road, it doesn't fit that. And that's so my hope would be that we would at least keep it to an R or to an R20, 120 also. Anyway, that's my input. Thank you.
Thank you for your input. Just to clarify, I still see hands raised by Mr. Cody Howe and Mr. Steve Wynn. You both commented. Are your hands raised to add additional comment, or just haven't lowered them yet?
This is Cody. I just hadn't lowered it yet. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
All right, sounds good. And then I saw Dan Dixon briefly raise hand and go back down. I don't see any hands raised currently.
Mr. Chair, can we make a motion to close this public hearing? It seems like we're going around in a circle here.
Absolutely, you can make that motion. We do have one more hand raised, but is there a second on this? Were you making the motion or asking? If
Yes, I move to close this public hearing regarding the zoning.
Is there a second on this motion?
I'll second that.
Any discussion on the motion?
I would submit we let Mr. Dixon make the final comment, and then I would support that closing of the public hearing.
I support that as well.
That's not currently in order, Mr. Chair.
Help me with the process, Steve. Make sure I get that right.
Well, the motion would have to, you have a motion on the floor that has been seconded. The only discussion is with regard to that motion. If the motion needs to be amended, then a friendly amendment needs to be made, and the motion maker and the second would have to approve the amendment.
That was the language I was looking for. Would you accept, Mr. Brown, a friendly amendment to entertain the final comment? Yeah, that we had a hand raised as part of that motion. And was that Wesley? Did you open the motion?
Yes.
Would you accept that friendly amendment?
Yes, I would.
Yeah, Mr. Brown, you seconded the motion.
I was not the second, Mr. Carter was.
Oh, you were not. Okay.
Oh, that would be fine with me.
Okay. That is the motion on the table. Let's vote on that motion, after which we will be able to, if it passes, we'll be able to hear Dan Dixon's comment and the public hearing will be closed. All in favor of the motion as outlined with the friendly amendment, please indicate, and I will ask verbal because with so many people participating, it's hard for me to see everyone's hands. So I'm just going to ask Wes Woods.
Yes.
Okay, Jay Ackett.
Yes.
Dave Carter.
Yes.
Nathan McClellan is a yes, and Jim Brown.
Yeah.
Motion passes. After hearing Dan Dixon's comment, the public hearing will be closed. Dan, go ahead. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you all for your patience in allowing me to speak. As I was looking at the map that had been sent out, I presume that each of you have one of the zoning map applications. And if you look at the property, you can see that the homes on 400 West are in fact all R120. The homes, if you look to the right-hand side, are also larger lots. Though they might not be zoned that, they in practice are larger lots. It looks like they're all probably larger than an acre as they border up against that property. So just one final comment. If we look at that total area and we want to have something consistent and transition between those areas, it would be nice if we could keep those at a 1 acre. But again, R120, I think would be satisfactory for the neighbors and friends of this group. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Dan. And with that final comment, based on the past motion, the public hearing is now closed. And we will move to discussion with members of the commission. And, based on everything that we've heard this evening and the request of the applicant, which is before us this evening, to provide a recommendation to the city council to either a favorable recommendation or an unfavorable recommendation related to the request to move from an agricultural zone to an R110 low density residential zone for the property located as outlined previously. Now it's time for members of the commission to jump in and discuss the considerations with respect to, and again, similar to the public hearing, I would ask that we keep our comments and discussion focused on the rezone request. There are a number of additional planning considerations that can and will be addressed through the normal course of a development process. But with respect to the rezone request today, what comments from members of the commission, having patiently been waiting for the last 90 minutes to jump in?
Mr. Chair, I have a comment on this. As the commission, as we recommend these, I think that we're going to have this same conversation. As people want to develop their ground, of course, they want to maximize what they have. And as we keep moving out, I guess the question we need to ask ourselves, if not on this property, then is it going to be the next property or the next property or the next property? And the owners have the right to maximize their profits. But as the commission, I think we're just, as much as we're growing, we're going to run into this question every time as we reach the outskirts of the city and the developments start growing. This is going to be the ongoing question. Well, can't we do the R10s and not the R20s because we can put more homes in that area? And one last thing is, I've heard over the last year or two, the same thing is, well, it's zoned like this, but we're actually putting larger lots and larger frontages. So as the commission, I think we need to really ask ourselves where we're going to draw this out, what line, because each time we're going to get this same question proposed to us, I think. That's all I have.
Yeah, you make a comment that's been on my mind throughout the evening and previous nights as we've had conversations like these before, and that is the consistency of the general plan and each of these unique and individual projects that get proposed piecemeal. And the idea behind the zoning and the general plan is to, at least the way that I interpret it, is that it makes sense, it's well designed, it's thoughtful, there's logical transitions, it buffers appropriately, it's usable, all the things in line with the type of city that's been built through our ordinances, and that represents all of us. And when we come in with an 11-acre piece here and a 20-acre piece there, and we develop those, it can kind of get this hodgepodge feel if we don't create that continuity of interpreting the general plan as outlined, originally, and the original vision. And that's why that general plan to me is so important, because it sets that vision that each of these individual projects then need to be consistent with. And I say all that because as you were talking, part of that feeling that I had is, yes, the densities surrounding this proposed zone vary. There's the lower, the R110 that was clarified earlier, the R120, the cultural and the surrounding areas. But the way that R110 is actually used today is not as R110. And those lots currently, yes, they could be subdivided because that's the zoning, and potentially have, I don't know if we even have enough setback to do a flag lot behind those, but I just don't, I don't see that being a viable development option for those folks, even though it's zoned at that density. Maybe it is, but to me, the actual use in that area is at a larger or lower density than R110. Just looking at the R120 across the street and the way that the property is being used in the area that's zoned R110. Other comments, members of the commission?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, one of the things that was brought up was livestock. And what's the difference on livestock on R10 versus R20? I don't have that in front of me. I apologize, but maybe Weston can help me out with that.
I don't have that in front of me either. Weston, would you be able to speak to that?
I am unfamiliar with that one, but I can pull it up.
Mr. Chair, I could answer that.
Okay, please do.
Farm animals are allowed in every zone except for commercial. It is done by acreage. So, for example, 1 horse, cow, or 25 chickens are allowed on a lot that's 20,000 square feet. For each additional 10,000 square feet on that, you'll be able to have another item such as another horse, etc. So, in other words, you need to have 20,000 square feet to have farm animals.
Thank you.
Mr. Brown, anything to add with that insight?
Well, it does. I mean, when you do drive down that road, that's the flavor of that part of town. That part of the city has the horse, the buffalo, whatever else are over there. And so I could see people wanting to buy a lot there, have your horse, you trailer, or ride it over to Graceland and do your thing and come back. So I see that as a good transition for that part. Granted, we haven't addressed the general plan for 20 years, but yeah, that's just kind of how I feel when I drive down the Island Road in that part of town. So.
Thank you. What other discussion items do members of the commission have as we think about this rezone request?
I guess just to clarify, this was submitted as not just low density, but as specific low density R10. So there's no wiggle room. It's either R10 or a non-recommendation is the way I see it.
And
That's not correct. You have an application before you, and so you are making a recommendation to the city council, and it doesn't have to be either a yay or a nay. You can make whatever. Basically, the issue has been opened, and the planning commission now has the opportunity to make a recommendation to the city council. Again, even if it were a yay, you could still say, these are our concerns we'd like the council to address. Or even if you said no, you could support that with reasoning that they could take into account as they evaluated your recommendation and the application before them.
And the way that I understand that, Steve, is the application's calling for R110 based on consistency with the general plan, which calls for low density residential, and that includes R112 and R120. And we could potentially, if the applicant chooses and we have a recommend, the applicant can continue to move on to the city council, even if we gave an unfavorable recommendation, and continue that as part of the agenda, as I understand it. And or we could ask the applicant to potentially table it and reapply as a for R1 12 or R120, depending on what that is. But we can move forward with a recommendation with any of those options, as I understand it, and the applicant can choose to either table the conversation or move on regardless of our recommendation. Is that accurate?
Correct. And even beyond that, sometimes you might get a unique piece of property that a development doesn't lay out well in, and so you could also do a development agreement. Say we'll agree to the zoning based on this development agreement, and so that way you could provide a transition even within this property. And so you've got all kinds of options.
Thank you for clarifying, and good question. So that should open up a lot of discussion. Mr. Hackett, your hand is raised.
Yeah, I just noticed the great job that the staff does, and this information was downloadable and available for everybody. As I go through their review and I look at their recommendation on this memo, our job's not really to tell them, as far as I know, are you guys meeting the rules within the criteria? The answer is yes. Basically, they can do what they want to do with their land. Are we sensitive with kids walking on roads? Absolutely. But it doesn't mean, they can do what they want with their land within the rules. So I'm sympathetic to both sides there. The one comment, we haven't brought it up, and I'm not sure. To me, there's a very distinct comment about this international fire code and the reality of that road only being allowed 30 homes. And so you can almost see the future and the end all in the same paragraph of that development. And if that paragraph holds true, my bigger concern, because it talks about limiting to 30 with 7 homes already being there, the fire department seems to have a lot of power. So if I'm the person that doesn't want the development, I'm looking at the fire code to limit the number of homes. If I'm the person that wanted to develop that as much as possible, I'm looking for the future on how does entry and an exit come to play in that area. And when I look at a map of Morgan City, I understand those folks down there, how they feel about that area. They feel like that is such a rural horse, dead end road kind of thing. But I don't think we should be limited in our view. I understand how you live and I understand how these folks have lived there. But if you zoom out on a Google map of Morgan City, you're right in the middle of Morgan City. And so what came up with Pheasant Run was being so narrow-minded that we allowed one little block or two to dictate pass-throughs and fire lanes. And what I see here is these guys are following the rules. The fire code's gonna limit them until somebody can figure out a way to get a pass-through all the way over somewhere out of that area. You're not going to get more than 30 homes, and the next developer down that road's in trouble, maybe landlocked. And so what I would bank on that if you don't want it, and if you do want it, you're going to follow these staff notes on how to get as many. There's some comments in there about the city is not favorable when it comes to cul-de-sacs. They're hard to maintain. So a redesign of that, I think, would be required for the city to pass that all the way through. There's just some design issues that seem in previous discussions to be kind of against the momentum of what we would like as far as just a cost to maintain. And then I just have that bigger view. I know you're on big lots down in what feels like horse property, but in 100 years, when there's 100,000 people that live in this county, you're right in the middle of town. And so we have a responsibility to allow that growth, right? Unfortunately, 700 West, when I look on a map, that's going to be a busy road one day when my children are 80 years old. And so we should be prepared to support that busy road, however we do that.
I want to clarify just one comment, because it's also in the staff notes as well. And that is that the International Fire Code has a maximum of 30 homes that are permitted off a single access road. And 400 West today already has 7 homes on it, which would leave an inventory of a maximum of 23, as long as there's still only a single access. So even any type of, with that restriction, if that really is in place, then that leaves a maximum of 23. And so, Weston, can you clarify that that's how that fire code works and how binding that is?
Yeah, this is actually managed by the fire marshal. So this is his section to interpret and to manage. But I did reference this section. You are correct in your statement. The fire code does state that a second access is required after 30 lots. And we do count those 7 homes that are already on 400. However, there are 2 exceptions that aren't mentioned in the memo that I'll just bring to your attention, that they could access, or they could have potential 30 homes if the developer sprinkled the homes. And this is, again, with agreement with the fire marshal. He would have to work this out with them and internal city reviews, but there are exceptions for that. And I believe that there's an exception for if the road, if the access road is intended to or will have future connection. This road does intend to and will have future connection. But again, this is approved and granted through the fire marshal and his interpretation and understanding of the safety nature of what this looks like.
Thank you for the clarification. And it's good to know that there are 2 stipulations / caveats to that. Mr. Ackett, one other thought that I had just based on your comments is even with that limitation in place and the idea that the developer needs to operate within the parameters of the designated land use or zone, I agree with that, but I'd rather have that dictate the type of development that goes in, as opposed to kind of leaning on the fire code where there's some possible caveats, or I think Mr. Woods, you mentioned earlier some situations where it's been zoned one way, but there was the developer verbally agreed to do something that was lower density. Not that I don't trust people to keep their word, but I'd rather that be designated by the zone. And if the lower density is appropriate, for the land use as we consider rezone based on what we see in the contiguous properties, then I would rather have the zone reflect that and not necessarily rely on the fire code to limit that.
Mr. Chair, can I clarify what I was trying to say there?
Sure.
I said that I've heard over the last couple years on these little developments that it's zoned R18 or R110, but they're really bigger lots. We only have one of the lots that's an R18, so the rest of the lots are generally larger anyway. And so it would be nice, I think, that and that isn't the criteria for us to recommend to the council that this is a nice development. One more thing, Mr. Chair, we've heard a lot about transportation, and we've heard about entrances and accesses and safety. And I'm pretty sure that there is an overlay transportation. I'm not saying it right, but on the developments in the future, they've already know the ins and the outs and how they're going to tie into these vacant lots for the next development. So some of these concerns that will be brought up, the city has already are out in front of that, and they know as a piece of land is sold that it's going to tie into this development and this development. So it's not showing up on these small lots as you brought up, maybe an 11-acre parcel, but in the future there is going to be proper exits and entrance and safeties in and outs. But as it stands right now, it's not possible because the other properties haven't been developed yet.
And thank you for the clarification. I believe Weston referenced a similar concept with the street plan that for the future, that eventually those streets will be through streets and connectivity in those in those developments. Thank you for the clarification. What other points of discussion do you want to bring up for those on the commission? Just a thought as I'm thinking about your comments, Mr. Woods, the hodgepodge nature that's the fear that I have as these developments come in are less about the accessibility of the master plan than it is about abrupt changes in use from property to property to property, from a higher density to a low density back to a higher density, or vice versa. That's more the hodgepodge feel that I'm trying to avoid, or because the way that the general plan reads is accommodating transitions from those higher densities towards the city center to lower densities as you move out to the outskirts of the city boundaries. And that seems to be consistent with planning principles. And that's one of the challenges I have with this particular request. It's not that R110 can't be requested in accordance with the general plan. It's that it's not consistent necessarily with the adjacent properties, that the land is being used today in a lower density than R110. And that's kind of what I'm trying to reconcile as I consider the applicant's request and what's being proposed for that particular property. We have a moment of thoughtful consideration. What other thoughts, before we take action and address the applicant's request?
Chair?
Yes.
I guess I would just like to offer, as you're thinking about, this option, you do have the understanding that it is next to a zone that's similar to it. And you made an excellent point that, those homes on that that are in that zone aren't necessarily functioning like R110. So just to reiterate, this does meet the general plan, but the general plan, specifically states that, low density has various types and is characterized by single family residential developments, 0 to 5 units. And so it obviously spans, a pretty big area, 0 to 5 units, and what that looks like. So with the understanding that, if it doesn't fit with the surrounding character, that could be a caveat to, as Steve Garside mentioned, bring in a development agreement to limit lot size within the R110, or frontage, or whatever the case might be, or again, potentially make other recommendations, but just my 2 cents.
Thank you. One thing I'd like to maybe hear from the applicant, if I may pose a question directly to you or your representative. You have laid out a concept plan and you're requesting R110, and the concept plan is consistent with that request. My question is, and you mentioned this earlier, Cheryl, with respect to this isn't concrete. And my question is, what does that mean to you as you contemplate, the development that you're looking to move forward with your estate? Is that something that you would consider a lower density R120 type of configuration for that land use? Are you set on R110 and want to press forward with the application as originally requested? When you say not concrete, what type of flexibility are you thinking of?
When we had our preliminary meetings with the city department heads, we talked about having it zoned to R110 because of the master plan, and knowing that 400 West was going to be developed and continue on eventually in the master plan. We were asked at that time, we presented 3 different concepts, and we listened to all of the input that everyone gave us, the fire department, all the different entities. We changed our concept based on the input we received from them. And so with all of those changes that we have done, this is the concept we've come up with. It's to keep it in accordance with the master plan, and what we were told was the zoning when we bought the land.
Did that answer your question?
Well, partly. So in other words, it is consistent with the general plan in the sense that R110 is a low residential or low density residential use, and that's consistent with what the master plan calls for that property. It also would be consistent to be R112 or R120. So any of those densities would be just as consistent with what the general plan calls for, that the maximum density would be the R110. The lowest density would be the R120. And that's my question, is within those potential uses, is this something where you're set to move forward as is without wiggle room? Or I'm just feeding off the concept you mentioned, it wasn't concrete, or based on that, would you consider other low residential zones that like the R120? And that's the question I was asking. And you're on.
Okay, so would would you allow Norm Daly, the representative that was speaking in the public meeting, to ask you a couple of questions to help us answer that question?
Absolutely.
Okay, Norm, they said yes. Here you go.
All right, thank you. So if I'm understanding your question, or at least the comments, or let me ask this question. What is the commission's opinion with respect to the city staff or planning or the staff's recommendation that this be sent up with approval? What I'm hearing is that what their recommendation is really isn't consistent with what you're thinking as a planning commission. I don't know that for sure. I'm not trying to put words in your mouth. I'm just trying to understand what it is you're saying.
Yeah, so let me try to clarify. And to answer your question, you asked about the opinion of the body. I think part of this conversation is we are forming our opinion and trying to prepare the best recommendation we can for the city council to move forward with. And as part of that process, the question that I'm asking is exploring, some of the development concepts that the RUPS might have been entertaining when it was mentioned that the plans are not concrete. In other words, was that simply not concrete within the confines of R110, and you can redraw boundaries, but still with R110, and that's how you want to move forward with the application as originally intended? Or did that open up the conversation to potentially consider a lower density within that same consistency of the general plan, which goes all the way up to R120 for that property? And that's my question. Is that part of the flexibility that you're considering?
I think there is some flexibility. And in fact, we're thinking that perhaps at this time, the best thing to do is for us to ask for a continuance of this meeting. Let us go back and see what we can do to rework it and try to take into greater consideration the input by the community and see if we can do something that alleviates any concerns that the Planning Commission may have and that the community has as well. I'm not sure where that will go and how different, if at all, it may be, but that's what we're requesting at this particular time.
Okay, thank you. With respect to that, Steve, I just want to make sure that we follow protocol. If the applicant has requested a continuance, where does that leave us with the discussion? Do we simply put this on the next agenda based on the applicant's request? What's the right procedure there?
Well, it could either be the next agenda, or if they feel like they need more time than that, I can't imagine that they would, but that's exactly what we would do, is just that we would continue this on to the next meeting to receive that additional input. We would not need to reopen the public hearing.
That was my next question.
And so we would hear what it is that they've proposed. I mean, obviously, if there was significant difference, obviously, if their proposal came back and actually asked for a higher density, then we would need to reopen the public hearing. But if the density request either remains the same or is reduced, then we would not need to reopen the public hearing.
Okay. Thank you for that. So I guess I just would want clarification from the applicant that is what you're requesting at this point, a continuance, and you're on mute if you're responding to that. I just want to make sure that we don't prematurely move this off of tonight's agenda.
That is what we're requesting. What's that? Can I ask the Planning Commission when their next meeting is scheduled for?
They are the third Tuesday of every month. So it'd be October. Let's see what the third Tuesday of October would be. It'd be October 20th, it looks like. And you're still on mute. I can't hear you.
Yeah, that's what we're requesting, and that October date would work.
Okay. Thank you for that. So with the continuance request in place, there is no action for the commission to make a recommendation at this point. And the applicants will work with Teresa and city staff to ensure this is put on the October 20th agenda, if that's the time frame that you're working with. Otherwise, thereafter, we meet the third Tuesdays of every month.
We would still need a motion from the commission to do so.
Okay, thank you for that. I'll entertain a motion from the commission regarding the same.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion that we put item 1 and item 2 in reference to the Rupp subdivision, approximately 550 North, 400 West, Morgan, Utah, on continuum, allowing the applicant to further discuss that internally, and it'll come before the commission at the time that they're ready to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Brown, for your motion. Do we have a second on the motion?
Since this is a continuance, I'd actually request that it have a date specific, please.
Mr. Brown, would you be willing to amend your motion to include a specific date with respect to the continuance?
Yeah, we'll look at the October Planning Commission meeting, and then if needs more time, I guess we'll entertain another continuance at that time.
So just to be clear, October 20th, unless more time is needed thereafter. Is there a second on Mr. Brown's motion?
Mr. Chair, I'll second the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Woods. Do we have any discussion on the motion as outlined, which, just to clarify, is a continuance to the October 20th Planning Commission meeting of not just agenda item 1, which is this rezone request, but also agenda item 2, which is the discussion about the concept plan, which obviously is tied to the density of the zone request. So those are the two items included in the motion for continuance to the October 20th meeting. Any discussion on this motion?
Nate, just to be clear, then you would hold another public hearing, is that correct?
Well, Steve had indicated that if the request comes back from the applicant to either maintain the same density, R110, or a lower density, that a public hearing would not be necessary. It would only be if a higher density was requested.
Thank you.
Any other discussion on the motion? Then let's go ahead and vote on this this continuance. For those of us on the commission, I'm going to try to see all of our hands, but I'll do a verbal as well. All in favor of the motion as outlined by Mr. Brown and seconded by Mr. Woods, please indicate. And I see 3 with Wesley Woods, Jim Brown, myself are all in favor. I can't see Mr. Ackett or Mr. Carter. There you are. There's your hand. All right. That motion passes unanimously, and that takes us to the closure of agenda items 1 and 2. Thank you so much for your participation, your consideration, both from the applicant and those in the community that spent the last couple of hours sharing thoughts through the course of the public hearing. Thank you for that. We do have one more agenda item, which is related to a historic design review based on, let me just pull this up so I get it right. Based on the property located at 145 Commercial Street, the property that many people might recognize as the former Buzzy's location. And the question is with respect to some of the design principles and materials that have been requested by the applicant to use in the facade off of Commercial Street, which falls into the historic overlay district and requires approval through the Planning Commission to move forward with those designs. And so that's what's before us tonight. What I'd like to do at this point is turn the time over to Doug Wycliffe, if you're able to join us, and if you could share a little bit about where you're at with this and what you're recommending, what you'd like to do with the property, just to give context to the project.
First of all, I appreciate everyone's time. I know it's getting late, so I'll try and work my way through this rather quickly. We did submit a final rendering showing the products that'll be on there, the colors. We had planned to go one way, and then when we took off the facade, there was some historic Spanish Revival stucco that kind of threw a wrench in everything. You know, there's been some questions surrounding that. And that stucco was put on in 1927, and it was popular from like 1915 to 1940. You want to read one, Cheryl?
Oh,
I got a hold of the Cheryl.
Cheryl Gross with the Historic Committee. Sorry, Historic Society. And she just wrote a little endorsement letter. I'll just share just a part of it. We emailed this just a little bit before this meeting started, because she just sent this like at 6 something tonight. She said, we highly encourage decisions to be made with this goal in mind. That's referring to, sorry. Returning this building to its former state is extremely important in our quest to place Morgan Historic District on the National Historic Register. So we highly encourage decisions to be made with this goal in mind. The stucco on the facade of Doug's building is indicative of the Spanish Revival style that was popular from about 1915 to 1940. The train depot has a similar type of stucco, however simpler and painted in just one color. Doug's building has an extremely rare stucco that impressed the people from the State Historical Society and should be maintained in the pure form in which it now exists. The building owner should be complimented whenever they are willing to help us maintain the historical aspect of the district. This building is a unique example of the era in which it was built. And that was from both Cheryl Gross and Rachel Turk, the county historian.
So I don't know if everyone has the latest rendering. They're able to look at that. It shows all the materials we're using, and LP siding like we did on the building there at the end. We were going to maintain the stucco. It needs a little bit of repair work, but we'll maintain that. Let's see. Along the, I don't know if you have the old picture. It shows the vitrolite and maybe.
Before you continue, I just want to make sure so that we can visualize. I do have the rendering up. It's on a different computer, so I can't share it. But do the other members of the commission have the rendering?
Okay. Teresa's got it right there.
So this rendering that they're referring to is one that we had a meeting today at 3:30 with Doug and Karen, and they've submitted this. So it was not in your packet. It was emailed this afternoon. I'm not very good at sharing pictures, but I'm going to hold up the drawing did. And if you did receive it, just raise your hand would be great. It looks like, yes.
Thank you. Yes.
I'll see if I can get that pulled up while you continue to walk through this, Mr. Wycliffe.
Oh, the picture was taken back probably in the late 20s. It shows a vitrolite, maybe a marble, a product down lower. And we're gonna try and maintain that with a granite, a black granite. And what was the color on the, what was the name of that?
I have it here.
On the marble, I'm not sure what the name of it was, but
Okay, so we've got, so the product that they used back in the 20s was vitrolite, which is a glass product, which is difficult to come by and expensive, and it's fragile. It breaks easily. And so we're trying to do what they did back then. Oh, are we? Oh,
great.
Looky there. Very nice. Okay, so we are trying to copy their look that they had back in the 20s without using the vitrolite, but instead using a high polished stone. So it's like the glass look. And so we're using we'd like to use a high polished granite for the black. Thank you. And then a high polished marble. It's called Viviana watercolor polished marble tile, where she's indicating, nope, that's the stucco up there.
Right there,
in
yeah.
between, yeah, there, and then up, and then around the windows, all through there. And it's a very pretty tile. It's got greens, blues, grays, and white in it. Are you getting that, Teresa? Thank you. And we think that it would closely match, though, I mean, though it's difficult to know exactly what colors they used back then because it's only a black and white photo, but we're going on the theory that they used green in their vitrolite because of the green colors that are in the stucco up above on the original, yeah, up there, thank you. And so, and because it was a very popular color that they used back in the day. And so we were trying to stick with something that would be as, yeah, there we go, as historically accurate as we could get, and stick with the look that they had then. So yeah, it's a pretty and shiny, looks a lot like the glass product that they had then. So that's what we were doing for that side. And then on the let's see. Oh, Rachel Turk is here. Hi, thank you. Hi, Rachel. And then on the other side, the 133 side, we're using LP siding with, and we're using the colors. It can be painted. We're using the colors with using the historic palette. And my colors on here may not be wonderfully accurate. They're as accurate as my colored pencils could get, but I do have the colors referred to there, like the George Pitt House. Oh, that's me. Sorry. The George Pitt House Caramel on the LP siding. And then the George Pitt House Green is the dark green that goes around on the restored wood there. And then also up again on the trim on the above on the 145 side. Yep, perfect, thank you. Whoever's doing the mouse, you're doing a great job, thank you. And then also inside the rectangles of the, on the left side, inside the rectangles of the green down below. Yeah, there we go, is the George Pitt House Bisque, which will also go, the stucco up above is a tan color right now, and so we're thinking that will also match there when we restore that.
We are on the left-hand side at 133. It was converted back to just, it was converted to one door. We are returning that to two door to make it look true to its history. The windows will stay the same. The doors will change out. There'll be a commercial grade door, but we're gonna put a veneer on them so we get the same look, yet we have something that's gonna last for a long time. The Buzzy sign is gonna be professionally restored. I know it.
Country Cafe.
The country.
It's not gonna be the one that says Buzzies, but yeah, the Country Cafe sign.
But I know it was, didn't look very good when it was up there, the way it was installed and the wire hanging and all that, but everything will be in conduit. It'll look professional. But that's a piece of history we should keep.
I think that's good.
That's pretty much, yeah.
So question.
All right, thank you. And just to be clear, would you be able to outline what's different and what you're asking for, what changed? This is the part I missed. When you got into that stucco and or the wood siding and found those challenges, and so you're looking to change out, which material is the new material that in that plan that was shown on the screen?
Well, it used to have the wood, the regular wood on there. We're changing that to a similar wood product, LP siding that just has a lot of longevity to it. And
our original plan
Let me clarify
was
my question. Yeah, based on, you've come before us before and proposed, some of the things that you wanted to do with these two facades. And I guess what I'm asking for is, based on what you found with the siding or that wood paneling that had some challenges and the changes you're proposing now, what's different between last time and this time?
well, this time, the 145 is totally different because we're bringing it back to that late 20s look. So that's a complete makeover. The 133 side, when we took off all the wood on it, we found the original, I don't know where the picture is, but we found the original wood underneath what,
the rectangles at the bottom.
yeah, the rectangles at the bottom of 133. That wood is in great shape. It's original. And so we're just gonna sand it and restore it according to historical standards and just maintain and keep the look of that side.
Yeah,
from back in the day.
Previously, our original plan was to keep the wood look that it had when we purchased the property, that it's had for, I don't know how long, but a very long time. But to just change it out for LP siding on both sides. But then when we pulled off the wood and uncovered the stucco and discovered the historical significance of that stucco, we decided, no, we can't cover that up. And excuse me, we can't cover that big piece of history up. It's too significant. So
I
changed.
And we're kind of on the borderline of whether we're going to get the registry or not. You have to have so much has to be historic, and I think keeping the stucco on the 145 and bringing back the vitrolite look, I think it plays into that well.
But even whether or not we get on the registry, it's just important to keep the history.
Yeah, thank you. That does help. I also want to clarify the subject property that's part of this application. So in the agenda, it's listed as 145 Commercial Street. are we looking at both projects? Are those different addresses
Well,
or both part of the
it's-
application?
It is, it's one building now. It was similar to the building that I bought on the end. It was at one point in time 2 buildings, but now it's one. That's all getting cleaned up. I have surveyors that are putting together to get all that into one lot. And I'm not sure if the 133 address, so I imagine it'll go away.
Okay, so you're considering it based on the process you're going through to combine that lot. You're considering.
Yeah,
the whole
well,
project
the
from
city's
45.
requested it, and I'm gonna do it.
Yeah,
Okay.
we purchased it just as 145 Commercial Street. We're just clarifying,
Which side of it.
we're talking about.
Okay.
Because it is labeled as 133 on the
I
door.
just wanted
I
to
think
make sure we understood the scope. So that's
Yeah.
helpful. And then the last question, I don't know if it's for you or potentially Rachel from the Historical Society, but the materials that you've chosen and outlined in that pencil drawing, which by the way, thank you, that's helpful to see that. Those colors, are they consistent with what's in the color palette for the historical overlay zone? It's hard to see that through the electronic images. I did stop by the city offices today and looked at a couple of samples of the black surround and then the marbling. I forget what the materials were, but I did see those live. But I just want to kind of make sure that those colors that you've chosen are in line with the color palette that's in place for that zone.
Well, I realize that there isn't a black on the historic palette. But as far as what is on, is what was, on the picture originally in 1927 or, late 20s, whenever that was taken. And, what we feel was historically accurate, it was black at that time. The stone that we chose, the tile that's got the green, the blues, and the grays. We feel it matches the sage.
It was on the stucco.
Yeah, well, no, the sage that's on the palette. I'm sorry, my phone is not showing me the words very well right now, so I can't read it very well. And then there's a gray blue that's underneath the sage, and then there's also grays that are in it that also I've compared the palette. I have a picture of it on my phone. I've compared the palette with it on the tile, and it matches, I believe, quite well.
Thank you. Other members of the commission, what questions do you have for the applicant or discussion about the project?
So if I may, so these black lines, we're talking what, 4 inches, 6 inches at the most? Donald black?
My guess is they're probably 6. If we have a 12-inch, it'll get cut in half.
Yep.
This should be really neat when it's done. It's once we saw what was underneath and saw the old picture, yeah, we wanted to change it and make it as original as we could.
And Mr. Brown, did you have a follow-up question based on?
No.
Okay.
Thank you. I do have a question though. I mean, what do you see? I mean, I know it's not right now, but future signage on this property, or is that, how is that going to play in where it's now building?
We'll put the original cafe sign back up. The other sign will come back, and it'll be in line with the other signs that are down the road, depending on what restaurant would be there. It'll be something that could probably be changed out. Not that I expect our restaurant to fail, but it'll be similar to the signs that are down the road. And so I'm not asking to put any signs with any names of the restaurant, just the cafe sign back up at this time.
Thank you for that.
I don't know the name.
What other questions do we have about the project for discussion?
Chairman?
Yes.
Weston has, he's able to go ahead and share the colors, et cetera. So if you don't mind, he'll do that at this time.
That'd be great. Thanks, Weston.
The share feature's locked.
Oh. Oh, let's see. I don't know how to unshare it. Let's see, one participant share at a time. Multiple. Okay, let me see if now did it open it up? Okay.
Oh, wow, look at this.
So I don't have the black stone on here or the black tile on here, and I don't show the colors for the doors as far as the wood overlay. I'm not sure what that would look like. But I put the colors associated with the quote that it's referencing. And then if you look at the top, the 3 colors that are associated on the left are tied to that first building. And then on the right, the 4 colors with the tile and the accent tile as well.
Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah, the wood or overlay, we're doing the same color as the trim, the George Pitt house green. So, yeah, the wood veneer, the same. Well, that's much better to have that.
Yeah, that's really nice.
Thank you.
We're learning.
So from the planning perspective, I have not just because most of this came out today as far as all the specific colors and the rendering and what's broken up to what specific spot, I have not had the chance to go through a thorough review. But as I look at it, I mean, I think I can see what you see. The colors do seem to match and look well together.
Thank you.
And I realize each individual unit has its own, distinct design and personality. With the adjacent properties on either side of this, how does this color scheme fit in? I can't remember what that looks like.
The Morgan liquor store is on one side, and we took that one definitely into account because it has it's like a maroon and red and stuff. We definitely we had gone with some at first, and we're like, no, that will not look good next to Morgan liquor. So we definitely took that into account, and I think that we chose colors that will look good next to that. And then on the other side, it's the First National Bank, and it's very neutral colors.
Just a brick building.
Yeah, just plain brick right now.
Yeah.
So anything will look good there.
Thank you. Well, let's make sure that we cover any other topics or questions regarding this. I guess one question I have, just based on what you're sharing, Weston, because the details came in so late and hasn't been subject to a full staff review. It sounds like you're, from a staff perspective, comfortable with the color scheme as presented. In other words, I don't want to hold the applicant back with a decision tonight if we don't need to. If it's too premature because we just barely got this and there needs to be more time to look through the selections, then let's outline that now and not continue to take more of the evening. But if we can move forward, then I'd like to move forward and make a decision and take some action for the applicant.
Appreciate that. Winter is
Thank you,
coming on.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
There we go. As far as my recommendation, without giving it a good review, I can't say if anything would really come up as far as a question or concern. I mean, my initial marks are on there. You can see those. I think if you approved it, we would just want to be very clear on which materials are being approved. Obviously, they provided a lot of colors, and so those are easy. The black stone, they are referencing the name of it in there, but I don't have a picture of what that looks like for the commission to see. And as far as the doors and what they look like, I think that really relies on the commission on as far as how they want to regulate that. But I think it would be fair to have a good review and have all the colors to look at and see how they all go together. Just so that we're all aware and all on the same page as far as what's being presented and what's going to be done with the building. But if that can be accomplished tonight, then I think that's appropriate as well.
The black is just a polished granite, so it's it's a very consistent look with that. The doors are going to be the same as the trim, so even though underneath the door, the two doors, they'll be commercial, you'll think they're wood.
Here, Teresa has the black granite there. There it is, shiny black.
Mr. Ackett has asked a question for Rachel regarding how she feels, and part of that, I guess, would be we have the historical overlay zone in place to preserve that historical look and feel of these buildings that are part of the heritage of Morgan City, and so that's the intent. And I'm curious, just like Jason Ackett, Rachel, what your thoughts are as you see this proposal with your historical perspective and expertise. Would you mind sharing your thoughts on how this meets the intent of this historical district? And Rachel can't hear you. Well, we are on standby. We still can't hear you, Rachel, although I'm getting an echo now. I don't know if anyone else is, but if you can connect either through the audio and or just chat in with some of your comments, that would be helpful to answer Jason's question. While we're waiting for that, anything else that we need to consider as part of this? And one of the thoughts that I have is just, can potentially, if this all feels good and the materials are defined well enough that we feel like the project will come together without deviating from this design, in any material fashion, and subject to a deeper review by staff as this is evaluated. It feels like there's some action that we can potentially take here, but what questions do we have before taking any action?
Well, one thing, I know she's unable to talk, but she is one of the signature blocks on the September 15th memo supporting it, the look. Rachel is, so.
Okay, thank you for that. And Rachel just chatted in saying the Historical Society supports the design as it stands.
And Mr. Chair, I know this is a little bit out of my role, but having been on staff since this ordinance was implemented, I want to commend the applicants for this. And this is probably, if not one of the most exciting projects and renovations that we've seen on commercial streets since the ordinance has been implemented. And so I just want to say thank you to the two of them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
It feels like the whole street is getting vibrant. You know, once we were basically finished with the other building, it is really a neat place to go. I don't know if you've all been there lately, but it has a really neat feel to it. And when the restaurant opens up, which won't be long, I think it's gonna be great.
It's exciting. We love doing this.
Yeah, it's a passion.
We're loving Morgan, loving it.
We just can't. We just got to find a house there.
All right, thank you. Well, let's pose anything else that we need to discuss. Mr. Carter, Mr. Woods, Mr. Ackett, and Mr. Brown. Any other questions, thoughts, concerns that you have for the applicant and or the interpretation of how they've created the facade with respect to the ordinance?
I guess I do have one quick question. I hate to ask it, it's getting late, but are you going to repair it and save the stucco, or are you going to replace it with synthetic and try to replicate? That's one thing.
Oh no, it's got to be original. It needs to be original. It needs a little bit of repair work, but it needs to maintain its original, as original as we can.
And having said that, driving by, seeing the First National building, as was discussed last time, it looked sharp as you presented to us. So, Mr. Chair, I'm comfortable with making a motion if you'd so allow.
I will entertain a motion.
I make a motion that we allow this project to go forward as we talked about, as discussed this evening, with the Keller pallets, and give the applicant permission to proceed.
Mr. Brown, thank you for your motion. Is there a second on this motion?
I'll second that, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Carter. We have a second. Any discussion on this motion before we vote?
Nate, you mentioned maybe would it be well to have a conditional review from the staff or a favorable review?
I did mention that, and something that may just be a safety net in case a deeper look that we don't commit to something that we didn't understand just with this short window we had to evaluate this. So that's something that you could potentially add as a friendly amendment, Mr. Brown, if you're interested to add that caveat that pending favorable review by staff. I don't know if that's appropriate to be worded that way, Steve, if you could make sure that it is. But Mr. Brown, you may not even want to entertain that at all. So that's part of this discussion.
No, that's fine. I have no problem with that. I just don't think, I think we as Planning Commission, unless something glaring comes up, I think we can trust the staff to move forward and give final approval on this.
Yeah, does that put us in any legal challenge, Steve? I guess is my question, where we're making something contingent on staff as opposed to the appointed commission. Is there a challenge with structuring it that way?
With the information that's been received and even albeit the lateness, the specificity of the application, along with the colors and the demonstration, I think that gives staff good parameters within which to work. And if it's outside those parameters, then obviously they'd request a revisit with the commission. So I think that is appropriate, knowing that they will act within those parameters.
Okay. That being said, Mr. Brown, would you accept the friendly amendment to make that condition?
Correct.
And Mr. Carter, you'd seconded it. Do you still second the?
Yes, I will.
Any further discussion to this motion? Let's go ahead and vote. Again, I'll try to see visually, but all in favor, please raise your hand. And also if you would verbally acknowledge. I see Mr. Carter, Mr. Woods, Mr. Ackett, all favorable. I'm favorable if you didn't see my hand. And Mr. Brown, it's your motion. but I'm sure your hand is up.
Yes.
All right, there it is. There you are. Okay, that motion passes unanimously as outlined. Thank you. And that brings us to the conclusion of our agenda items for the evening. And thank you to the Wycliffes for coming back to us with the additional information, the renderings, the preparation. It does make a huge difference. Even on a long night like tonight, it's just helpful to see all that come together. So thank you for that.
We really appreciate you guys and your time and your passion for the city.
And thank you to Rachel for
Yeah, that's
for
what I
your
was gonna say.
availability.
Yes. Thank you, Rachel.
Absolutely. Thank you, Rachel. All right, with that, we're at the conclusion of our meeting, and this meeting is now adjourned.
All right, have a good night.
Thanks, everyone.